I've recently been sick all last week, which is why I haven't posted a video. I am still not feeling the best, but I do not want to leave you guys without a video at least once a week. So today I thought we will just be doing some very simple old school ASMR, and I will be reading a book and just whispering. You can listen in the background like an audiobook, or you can listen to relax or fall asleep. I've been wanting to film this video all day because my anxiety has just been terrible with me being sick and not being that productive. So I thought I was okay enough to make an ASMR video and read a little bit, which I hope will help calm my anxiety a little bit. Reading usually makes me sleepy and relaxed, so I hope you listening, it'll have the same effect. So the book that I will be reading you guys tonight has been very popular on social media and TikTok. It is this self-help book, and it is called Don't Believe Everything You Think. And this is by Joseph Nguyen. I really hope I'm pronouncing that right. This book, as from what I read, has been really great for people who struggle with their mental health, anxiety, depression, overthinking. So I thought if I could share this book with you guys, maybe it'll also help at least one of you guys. So on the back of this book, it says, in this book, you'll discover how to become unaffected by negative thoughts and feelings, how to experience unconditional love, peace, and joy in the present, no matter what our external circumstances look like, how to instantly create a new experience of life if you don't like the one you're in right now, how to break free from a negative thought loop when we inevitably get caught in one, which I can relate to that one, how to effortlessly create from a state of abundance, flow, and ease, how to let go of anxiety, self-doubt, self-sabotage, and any self-destructive habits, how to develop access your intuition and inner wisdom that goes beyond the limitation of thinking. So we are gonna start at the very beginning, and I feel like this is going to be a multiple part video series. So I will be reading until either my battery dies or my internal battery dies and it's time for me to go to bed. Please sit down, lie down, get as cozy and comfortable as possible, and just relax. Focus on your breathing. Listen to my whispering, and I hope you enjoy. Let's start with the introduction. Title: What you will discover in this book and how to get the most out of reading it. This book was written to help you find everything you've been searching for and the answers to all the questions you've had your entire life. I understand this is a bold statement, but you will shortly see why I have complete confidence in saying this. What I know to be the truth from the depths of my soul is that you will not be the same person you were after reading this book. The only constant is change. Growth is an inevitable process of life, and it will be impossible for you not to change after reading this book. We cannot change what we are not aware of, and once we are aware, we cannot help but change. Quote by Sheryl Sandberg. No matter who you are, where you're from, what your background is, what you've done and haven't done, what status or wealth you do or do not have, Martian or not, you can find total peace, unconditional love, complete fulfillment, and an abundance of joy in your life. I promise you are not the exception, even though it may seem like it. Love has no boundaries. An open mind and a willing heart are all you need to receive every answer you've been looking for. And yes, there are extremely practical implications and byproducts of understanding what is inside of this book, which many of my coaching clients have experienced, such as a 2 to 5 time increase in income, exponential growth in their businesses, deeper and more harmonious relationships, overcoming lifelong addictions, the spontaneous disappearance of destructive habits, and increase in health, vitality, and overall energy. Miracles like these occur daily for many who understand the principles within this book. iceberg. If I were to list some of the improvements and results people have gotten from this understanding, more than half of this book would be stories of such daily miracles. I am reluctant to mention any of these external results because it is not the point of this book. These physical manifestations are the byproduct of this inside-out understanding of how our experiences of life work. In actuality, we only want external results like money and significance because we want to experience certain feelings inside. The feeling is really what we want in our lives, not the physical things, but the trap is that we believe the physical things will give us those feelings. The secret lies within the feeling. This book will help guide you to uncover the truth you already know within and discover these feelings you've been looking for your entire life. Don't read this book for information. Read it for insight. Insight or wisdom can only be found within. That is why it's called insight. Inside. To find everything you're looking for in life, you must look inside yourself and discover the wisdom that already exists within you. All the answers lie deep within your soul. This book is merely a guide to help you look in the right place. I truly admire anyone who still has the hope that what they're looking for is still out there. This means you have hope. Without hope, we have nothing. So the fact that you're here reading this now is a testament to your faith, courage, and strength. I know with 100% certainty that you will find what you're looking for if you continue down the path you're on with the hope you have in your heart. I want to make it clear that this book is not the only book that contains truth. The truth lies within everyone and in everything. You must look beyond the form, the physical, to see and experience the truth, the spiritual. The words in this book are not truth. They point to the truth. Look beyond words to see the truth for yourself. Truth cannot be intellectualized. It can only be experienced. The truth lies within a feeling, which is why it cannot be formulated into a word. If you want to find truth, look beyond the words and look for a feeling. Many who discover the truth describe the feeling as complete peace, unconditional love, and overwhelming joy. People also describe it as the most familiar, unfamiliar feeling. It feels like you're finally home, looking for that feeling, and everything will be revealed to you. In this book, I will not say anything you your soul. This is why it will be familiar, unfamiliar feeling when you experience the truth. Don't try to use your intellect to figure it out. You won't. As soon as you intellectualize it, you've missed it. The truth does not come from memorizing a sentence or two. A child can do that, but they will not understand the truth. The truth comes in the form of a feeling. From what feeling will come the wisdom and truth you seek, which will set you free. That's what we're all ultimately seeking, isn't it? What I will unveil to you in this book will seem simple. It will seem almost too simple, and your brain will try to fight it or attempt to make it more complex. It will think that it can't be this simple. When that time comes, I want you to remember that the truth is always simple. What is complex can always be broken down into its smaller counterparts. The truth cannot be broken down into smaller constituents, which is what makes it truth. This is why truth is always simple. If you want to find the truth, look for simplicity. Approach this book with an open mind and a heart of pure intention to know the truth, and you'll receive everything you've been searching for. Before we move on, I want to express my deepest gratitude for you being here and sharing your time and attention with me. Those are some of the most valuable life forces you could give to another. So thank you for the gift to me, which you are also giving to yourself. Never forget your own divinity, because it is only through our divinity that we have our humanity. Okay, chapter 1. The journey to discovering the root cause of suffering. Quote, people have a hard time letting go of their suffering. Out of fear of the unknown, they prefer suffering. That is familiar. Okay. There is an important distinction to make when speaking about suffering. When I mention suffering in this book, I am referring to psychological and emotional suffering. There is a way in which no matter what happens in your life, you do not have to suffer emotionally and physiologically. I am not saying what we go through is all in our heads or made up. Terrible and unfortunate events happen to people every single day. I'm saying that although we experience a lot of pain in our lives, suffering is optional. In other words, pain is unavoidable. But how we react to the events and circumstances that happen in our lives is up to us, and that will dictate whether we suffer or not. Buddhists say that two arrows fly our way whenever we experience a negative event. Being physically struck by an arrow is painful. Being struck by a second emotional arrow is even more painful: suffering. The Buddha explained, in life, we can't always control the first arrow. However, the second arrow is our reaction to the first. The second arrow is optional. When I first heard of this quote from Buddha a few years back, I was confounded because although I understood what he meant, I didn't know how I would apply this in my own life. If anyone were given the clear choice of suffering and not suffering, I don't think anyone in their right mind would choose to suffer. How could I choose not to suffer? If it were as easy as that, I don't think anyone would suffer anymore. It wasn't until years later that I came across a new understanding of where suffering comes from and what could stop it at its source. As I began the journey of self-improvement, I came across many different teachings, studies, and methods to help people overcome their problems. I read dozens, if not hundreds, of books, studied psychology, went to therapists, listened to many different thought leaders, tried changing my habits, waking up at 4 a.m., changing my diet, becoming more structured and disciplined, shadow work, studying personality types, meditating daily, going on spiritual retreats, following spiritual masters, and researching different ancient religions. If you name it, I've probably tried it. It was desperate to find an answer because I wanted to know how to stop suffering in my own life and help others do the same. Although some of these things did help me improve incrementally, I didn't stop my suffering. I still always felt highly anxious, fearful, unfulfilled, irritated, angry, and frustrated every day. Even after doing all of that, I still didn't discover the answer. And if I'm being honest, I was even more lost than before I started on this quest. All of a sudden, after years and years of searching, I stumbled upon one of my first mentors who revealed the answer to how I could alleviate my suffering. The answer I discovered was in understanding how our minds work and how the human experience is created. Chapter 2: The Root Cause of Suffering. We live in a world of thought, not reality. Sydney Banks once said, "Thought is not reality, yet it is thought." Fuck. How we doing? You doing good? Chapter 2: The Root Cause of Suffering. We live in a world of thought, not reality. Sydney Banks once said, "Thought is not reality, yet it is through thought that our realities are created." Each of us live through our own perceptions of the world, which are vastly different from the person right next to us. An example of this is that you could be sitting in a coffee shop having a quarter-life crisis, completely stressed out of your mind about how how you have no idea what you're doing with your life when it seems like everyone else has theirs together, while the person next to you is happily enjoying their fresh brewed drink while peacefully people watching. You are both in the same coffee shop, smelling the same aroma, surrounded by the same strangers, but how the world looks to both of you couldn't be more different. Many of us go through the same events, or in the exact location, at the same time, yet are having completely different experiences of the world. Here's another example of how we live in a world of thought and not reality. If you walk up to 100 different people and ask each of them what money means to them, how many different answers do you think you will get? Close to 100 different answers. Money is technically the same thing, but it means something different to each person. Money could mean time, freedom, opportunity, security, and peace of mind, or it could mean evil, greed, and the reason why people commit crimes. For now, I am not going to get into which one is right or wrong. Hint, there is no right or wrong answer, but that's for a different chapter. Another illustration of this concept is as follows. If you survey 100 different people and ask each of them what they think of our current president, how many different answers do you think you'll get? Even though it is the same person we're talking about, we will get 100 different answers because most people live in their own thoughts and perceptions of the world. The meaning or thinking we give an event determines how we ultimately feel about it. That means or thinking is the filter through which we see life from then on. Because of this, we live through a perception of reality, not in reality itself. Reality is that the event happened with no meaning, thinking, or interpretation of it. Any meaning or thinking we give the event is on us. That is how our perception of reality is created. This is how our experience of life is created from the inside out. It's not about the events that happened in our lives, but our interpretation of them, which causes us to feel good or bad about something. This is how people in third world countries can be happier than people in first world countries, and people in first world countries can be more miserable than people in third world countries. Our feelings do not come from external events, but from our own thinking about the events. Therefore, we can only ever feel what we are thinking. Let's hypothetically say that you really hate your job and it causes you an enormous amount of stress, anxiety, and frustration. It pains you even to set foot in the building where you work, and just thinking about your job makes you furious. When you're thinking about your job, you're just sitting on a sofa with your family, watching a TV show together, but you are fuming at the thought of your job. Everyone else is having a good time, except you. at this moment, everyone else in your family is having a different experience of life than you, even though the same event is happening. Just the thought of work created a whole different perception of reality, even though you're not physically at work. If it were true that external events cause us to feel the way we feel inside, then you should be a happy camper in your living room watching a funny TV show with your family every single time you do this activity. But that's not the case. Now that you may be saying that you're only feeling this way because an external event, your job, is causing you to feel stressed and anxious, to that I'll ask the question, is it absolutely true that every single person feels the exact same way about the job they're working in? Two different people can be doing the same job but will have completely different experiences. It can be the most amazing experience in a dream job for one person, but be another person's worst nightmare and living hell. The only difference between one person and the other is how they think about their job, which determines how they ultimately feel about it. Let's return to your original scenario of hypothetically hating your job. Remember how much stress, anxiety, and frustration it caused you when you're thinking about it. Let's do a quick thought experiment about that by answering the questions below. Who would you be without the thought that you hated your job? Take 1 minute to see what comes up for you, and don't move on until you do that. If you don't overthink it and truly let the answer surface from within, without that thought, you will most likely feel happy, peaceful, free, and light. Without our usual thinking about a particular event or thing, our experience of it completely alters. This is how we live in a world of thought, not reality, and how our perception of reality is created from the inside out through our own thinking. With this new understanding, you just uncovered the cause of all our human psychological suffering. The root cause of our suffering is our own thinking. Before you throw this book across the room and light it on fire, I'm not saying that this is all in our heads and isn't real. Our perception of reality is very real. We will feel what we think, and our feelings are real. That is completely undeniable. However, our thinking will look like an inevitable, unchangeable reality until we begin seeing how our reality is created. If we know that we can only ever feel what we are thinking, then we can change our feelings by changing our thinking. Thus, we can change our experience of life by knowing that it comes from our own thinking. And if that is true, then we are ever only one thought away from experiencing something different and transforming our entire lives at any moment through a state of no thought. In short, the moment we stop thinking is when our happiness begins. A long time ago, a young Zen monk lived in a small monastery in a forest near a small lake. A few senior monks occupied the monastery, while the rest were newcomers and still had much to learn. The monks had many obligations in the monastery, but one of the most important ones was their daily routine, where they had to sit down, close their eyes, and meditate in silence for hours at a time. After each meditation, they had to report their progress to their mentor. The young monk had difficulties staying focused during his meditation practice for various reasons, which made him very mad. After the young monk reported his progress to his mentor, the elder monk asked a simple question with a hidden lesson. "Do you know what is really making you angry?" The young monk replied, "Well, usually, as soon as I close my eyes and meditate, someone is moving around and I can't focus. I get agitated that someone is disturbing me even though they know that I am meditating. How can they not be more considerate? And then, when I close my eyes again and try to focus, a cat or a small animal might brush past and disturb me again. By this point, even when the wind blows and the tree branches make noise, I get angry. If that is not enough, the birds keep on chirping, and I can't seem to find any peace in this place." The elder monk simply pointed out to his pupil, "I see that you become angrier with each interruption you encounter. This is exactly the opposite of what the point of your task is when meditating. You should find a way to not get angry with people, animals, or anything around you that disturbs you during your task." After their consultation, the young monk went out of the monastery and looked around to find a place that would be quieter so that he could meditate peacefully. He found such a place at the shore of the lake that is nearby. He brought his mat, sat down, and started meditating. But soon a flock of birds splashed down in the lake near where the monk was meditating. Hearing their noise, the monk opened his eyes to see what was happening. Although the bank of the lake was quieter than the monastery, things would still disturb his peace, and he got angry again. Even though he didn't find the peace he was looking for, he kept returning to the lake. Then one day the monk saw a boat tied at the end of a small pier. And right then an idea hit him. "Why don't I take the boat, row it down to the middle of the lake, and meditate there? In the middle of the lake, there will be nothing to disturb me." He rowed the boat to the middle of the lake and started meditating. As he had expected, there was nothing in the middle of the lake to disturb him, and he was able to meditate the whole day. At the end of the day, he returned to the monastery. This and started meditating again. A few minutes later, he heard water splashing and felt the boat rocking. He started getting upset that even in the middle of the lake, someone or something was disturbing him. Opening his eyes, he saw a boat heading straight towards him. He shouted, "Steer your boat away, or you will hit my boat." But the other boat kept coming directly at him and was just a few feet away. He yelled again, but nothing changed, and so the incoming boat hit the monk's boat. Now he was furious. He screamed, "Who are you, and why have you hit my boat in the middle of this vast lake?" There was no answer. This made the young monk even angrier. He stood up to see who was in the other boat, and to his surprise, he found no one in the boat. The boat had probably drifted along in the breeze and had bumped into the monk's boat. The monk found his anger dissipating. It was just an empty boat. There was no one to get angry at. At that moment, he remembered his mentor's question. "Do you know what is really making you angry?" And then wondered, it's not other people, situations, or circumstances. It's not the empty boat, but my reaction to it that caused my anger. All the people or situations that make me upset and angry are like the empty boat. They don't have the power to make me angry without my own reaction. The monk then rowed the boat back to the shore. He returned to the monastery and started meditating along with the other monks. There were still noises and disturbances, but the monk treated them as the empty boat and continued meditating peacefully. When the elder monk saw the difference, he said to the young monk, "I see that you have found what is really making you angry and overcome that." Chapter 3. As humans, we have evolved to develop a sophisticated ability to rationalize, analyze, and think, because it simply helps us survive. Our minds do an incredible job of keeping us alive, but it does not allow us to thrive. It is concerned solely with our safety and survival, not fulfillment or joy. The mind's job is to alert us of potential dangers in our environment that may threaten our lives. It does its job so well that not only will it scan our immediate surroundings for threats, but it will even reference our backlog of past experiences to create hypothetical scenarios and predict what it thinks could be future potential dangers based on our memories. None of this is wrong by any means. The mind is simply doing what it was designed to do. When we don't understand that its only duty is to help us survive, then we will get angry and frustrated with it. All conflicts is derived from an innocent misunderstanding. Our mind's duty is to keep us alive. Our consciousness duty is to help us feel fulfilled. Your soul is the reason why you're even on this journey in the first place, to find peace, love, and joy for yourself. Your mind has done an amazing job at what it was made to do, but now you may relieve it of its job because we no longer live in the wild where death could be right around the corner in a bush. If we keep using our minds, we will constantly stay in a state of fight or flight, anxiety, fear, frustration, depression, anger, resentment, and all negative emotions, because the mind thinks everything is a threat to our very existence. If you want to be free, happy, peaceful, and full of love, then you will need to let go of listening only to your mind and go beyond it by turning into something much greater that will help you not just to survive, but to thrive. Chapter 4. Thoughts are the energetic, mental, raw materials we use to create everything in the world. It's important to know that thoughts are a noun and aren't something that we do, but something we have. A thought takes no effort or force on our end, and it is something that just happens. We also cannot control what thoughts pop into our minds. The source of thoughts come from something beyond our minds, the universe, if you will. Thinking, on the other hand, is the act of thinking about our thoughts. This takes a significant amount of energy, effort, and willpower. Thinking is actively engaging with the thoughts in your mind. You don't have to engage with each thought in your mind, but when you do, that is thinking. Thinking is the root cause of all our psychological suffering. Now you might wonder, where do positive thoughts fit into the picture? Positive thoughts, or thoughts that feel good, do not result from thinking. They are instead generated by our natural state of peace, love, and joy. They are a byproduct of a state of being, not a state of thinking. We will go in depth about this in the next chapter. For now, let's do a quick thought experiment. I'll ask you a question, and all you need to do is be aware of what you're experiencing, and we'll review what happened afterward. What is the dream amount of money you want to make a year? Pause here and wait for an answer to surface. Give yourself about 30 to 60 seconds to think about your answer to how much money you want to make in a year. Don't move on to the next step until you've had a decently sized train of thought about how much you want to make. Now take that amount and multiply that by 5. What do you think about this new dream goal for your income when we multiply it by 5? Take at least another 30 seconds to become aware of your feelings when you think about them and see what other thinking comes up for you as you feel your emotions. Don't move on until you've done the above. Okay, let's bring it back within a few seconds. That is a thought. Notice how quickly and effortlessly that came to you. After an answer popped into your mind, I asked you to think about your answer. What happened once I asked you to think about your answer? If you're like most people, you probably went on a wild roller coaster once you began thinking about the thought. You might have been thinking how there's no way you can make that much. No one in your family is making that much money. You don't know how to make that much. It's stupid to want that much, or that it makes you greedy. Notice how you felt when you were thinking about those thoughts. Most likely, it didn't feel that great, but that is okay, and I'll show you what you can do about it soon. This is a prime example of thoughts versus thinking. If I ask you a question, you will 100% have a thought that pops into your mind. Thoughts aren't inherently bad. They are intrinsically neutral. The moment we think about our thoughts is when we begin to take an emotional roller coaster. When we think about our thoughts, we begin to judge and criticize the thoughts and experience all sorts of internal emotional turmoil. When I asked you how much you wanted to make, you had a thought about the amount. The thought was neutral and didn't cause any emotional toll. You might have felt expansive or excited. It was only when you began thinking about that thought of how much you wanted to make, which has caused the self-doubt, unworthiness, anxiety, anger, guilt, or any other emotion you may have experienced. This is what I mean by thinking is the root of our suffering. The initial thought of how much you wanted to make didn't cause any suffering until you began thinking about the thought of how much you wanted to make. It is not necessarily to think about our thoughts or to judge them. It does us no good to do so. We may think that thinking is helping us, but all it's doing is causing us to feel all these negative, unwanted emotions and making us create reasons why we can't do it or why we shouldn't want it. The only useful and helpful thing was the initial thought that popped into your mind when I first asked how much you wanted to make. All of the thinking that happened was after destructive and unhelpful. Thoughts create. Thinking destroys. The reason thinking destroys is because as soon as we begin to think about the thoughts, we cast our own limiting beliefs, judgment, criticism, programming, and conditioning onto the thought, thinking of infinite reason as to why we can't do it and why we can't have it. Without thinking, we prevent all negative programming and judgments from tarnishing the initial thought of what you want to create. If I ask you, what are some ways you could make the amount of money you want? If you sat there long enough, you'll experience the same phenomenon of having random thoughts pop into your head of ways you could make it happen. These are thoughts of creation. Thoughts have the qualities of being infinite and expansive and feel energetically aligned with you have had thoughts from the divine when you feel positive emotions, lighter and alive. As soon as you begin thinking about those thoughts of the ways you can make the money you want, you'll immediately feel heavy, restricted, and limited, along with a whole onslaught of negative emotions. This is how you'll know if you're thinking. I use my feelings as an internal radar that tells me whether I'm getting direct downloads of thoughts from the universe, or if I'm in my head thinking about my thoughts. You can only ever feel what you're thinking, so feelings and emotions are like an intuitive internal dashboard that tells me if I'm overthinking. If we have many negative emotions, I know I'm thinking too much. This is another example of how we're naturally built for success. On the next page is a chart that compares thinking versus thoughts to help you identify which one is which within your mind. It is helpful to go through a few examples of thoughts in your mind and using the chart to identify if it is an actual thought or if it's thinking. And this is the thought versus thinking chart if you want to take a look, maybe screenshot it for later. Okay, in the next video we will start